continue this conversation. With all the well-crafted and well-intended policies, South Africa still struggles to turn around economically. Last year, Stats SA reported that about 30.5 million South Africans now are officially living in abject poverty. We are still in conversation with our guests and looking at the calibre and role of leadership in government steering the country in relation to where South Africa is. Right, let's go back to Sanko now, because Sanko, I think a very, very important points have been raised, that putting an unqualified individual into such an important position is not necessarily beneficial to the sector. Let's look at what's happened to the water department. That's one example. Let's look at communications. That's another department. And you were giving me an example of something like ABSA, who've moved their operations to Kenya, their IT operations, because South Africa is just not up to scratch. And that is worrying me. What do you say about that?
Thanks, man. I think what we must clear it here is that as Sanko, we don't condone people being given position on the basis of beauty. We don't condone such. And we are totally against those who are occupying these positions and they go out publicly and make a very wrong statement and impression, like the lives of the your former boss, who at some stage turned to label matric certificate as just a mere paper. That was stupid out of it. And we are saying the ministers in particular, those who are given these ministerial positions without any qualification, of course we agree with you that they were given an opportunity to go to school, but they never go there. We cannot have a minister who is in communication, for an example, in a form of promoted from the water ministerial where all money has been vanished.
Yeah.
That is not correct. And we cannot have a minister who was here, the likes of Faith Mtambu, when you go there and trying to get the qualification, nothing. Then at the end of the day, it happens. But what I think we must emphasize here is to say, whatever that happened, let's correct it. Let's agree that we had an administration that was full of ill-trained people. People were meant to occupy position on the basis of delivering certain hidden agendas. It is a fact, it is a known factor that people were deployed there to achieve certain objectives of other people. Now we've got the new administration. Our advice must be to the new administration that whatever we want to do in a form of deployment, let us be very careful and not mismatch. Because once you mismatch, as you clearly said, you take an expert from economics, you put him in education, you're not going to achieve anything.
Yeah.
Let's get right people at the right position so to deliver to the masses. Our people are really longing to get result of this democracy.
Yeah.
But what they don't want to see is to become the spectators of the corrupt and the corruptees, where people are looting as they wish. Then at the end of the day, we do as if we don't see. This is also happening down to all the government sphere. You can go to provincial government, you'll find a number of people who are there with an arrangement qualifications. We don't want this arrangement qualification simply because you have served in certain structure for 3 years, you get a kind of fake PhD of the Grace Mugabe. We don't want such. We don't want people who are at the mayoral position simply because they have been vocal in ensuring that certain candidate emerge to presidential. We don't want that. We want people who have studied. And we are not saying those who didn't study and have been part and parcel of this struggle must be get rid. But we are saying time is long now.
Yeah.
They must think of going to this abet. At least have something that can justify why we put you there. Remember, we are not a military state where people has to be given position on the base of boldness, of aggressiveness. No. We want people who can reason. And
we need to turn things around quickly. Yes. And that's something that I think we've all gathered here, is we've seen these cabinet reshuffles and these changes, although it's still very heavy. And as you mentioned in the beginning, there's still departments that are there that you kind of think, okay, well, what are you doing? And is it necessary to have you and a deputy minister? Because, if a minister is not there, the deputy minister isn't necessarily the acting minister in charge. And that has always confused me. But what would you like to see going? How streamlined can we take our government and make our government saving money but not affecting these industries?
I think the first port of call would have to be looking at I think they call it the balance of forces. The ANC needs to actually update it. It's called Through the Eye of a Needle. If you read it, the only time they actually speak about leadership is on page 22. And it's leadership without even speaking about qualifications. So they actually need to go back to who I think they term them their comrades or their cadres and say, listen, we actually have to put an entry-level qualification. And in terms of how government should be, let's accept that President Cyril Ramaphosa at the moment is, I think, if you to use the popular term at the moment, if you watch the Black Panther, there's a line from the late father of Black Panther, says, "It is very hard for a good man to be king." So we have to accept that, listen, he has to compromise. But he needs to tell us in the next year and a half leading up to the elections, which departments is he going to cut? My proposal is quite simple. I think we just need to restructure it as a whole. We need 2 or 3 economic development ministries that actually take the lead in planning, implementation and evaluating what we mean by economic development. And this precedent can come from even China and Singapore. Now imagine the size of China. We're talking, I think it's 1.2, 1.3 billion people. They only have 3 ministries. These 3 ministries are in charge of the whole country's economic development. 3. South Africa is only 55 million and we're guessing a bit there. But we have, if you read the mandate of each and every ministry, excluding the presidency, I think it's normally 3 or 4. Mandate 3 or 4 is always economic development. So you get the arts and culture, which will say we do economic development. So my question is, so all 35 of you are doing economic development ministry. No wonder we don't have one coherent economic development policy, which goes back to the NDP. That could actually be the rallying call.
Yeah,
my argument has always been the NDP is not a policy.
Yeah.
It's actually wishful thinking.
So you don't think we'll reach that goal by 2050?
No, I think
2030, not 2050, 2030.
Let me be controversial. This has always been my viewpoint, even in my writing. The NDP is a false document. It's not a policy, it's wishful thinking.
Okay.
So if we really need to change things, let's actually say, let's get a proper NDP.
Okay.
A planning document is not 400 pages long.
Yeah.
The Chinese one, which they've been running with for the last 30 to 40 years, does not go longer than 20 pages.
All right. I'm going to pause you because we need to continue this conversation. I don't want to end it up. We'll wrap it up after the news, but we've got to get to our news bulletin. Peresa, let me quickly hand over to you.
Okay.